The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
You're now about to witness the truth.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Thursday night, September 8th, 2016. Thank you for joining us. There's a lot happening, as always, so we want to jump right into the news. But before I jump into the news, as always, I want to thank my patrons, those people who make the show possible financially. You know, thanks to everyone who supports the show. I hope you've all had chances to listen to actually, I can see quite a few of you are enjoying the bonus shows that we do every night. Tonight's bonus show will be about the 50th anniversary of Star Trek: The Next Generation. And you guys can hear some noise in the background. I'm sending my research assistants down there to tell them to shut the hell up, man. But anyway, so tonight's bonus show, we're going to be talking about our favorite episodes of Star Trek and the political. Actually, you guys are going to need the keys. Oh, there you go. So this is going to be an interesting night already, I can tell. So we're going to deal with that in the bonus show. But I started all that to thank my patrons, the people who make it happen. Angela B. Angela, thank you for becoming a new patron. If you're interested in supporting the Benjamin Dixon Show, go to patreon.com/the BPD Show. All right. So this is what we're going to do. We've got a lot of news to cover and not a lot of time to cover it in. The first thing I want to cover is Gary Johnson. Gary Johnson this morning on Morning Joe had a problem identifying Aleppo. And not that that's like, that's definitely something that if you're running for president, that's something you should know. So I'm going to play this clip and then we'll discuss it. Here's Gary Johnson.
What would you do if you were elected about Aleppo?
About
Aleppo.
And what is Aleppo?
You're kidding.
No.
Aleppo is in Syria. It's the epicenter of the refugee crisis.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Well, with regard to Syria, I do think that it's a mess. I think that the only way that we deal with Syria is to join hands with Russia to diplomatically bring that at an end. But when we've aligned ourselves with, when we've supported the opposition...
I'm sorry, Governor. I have to stop you there. Okay, that's enough. So in fairness to him, to Gary Johnson, once he realized what Aleppo was and that it wasn't Alpo, the dog food, once he realized what it was like, oh, he actually had something that he could say to it. And truthfully, so let's delineate the differences here, right? Let's talk about this. So I don't expect the average American to know what Aleppo is. I do expect the average American to be able to take a wild guess that it's a city. That's it, right? You don't have to tell me where it is. You don't have to tell me what's happening there. But in, taking the context cues from, I forgot the guy's name from Morning Joe, taking those context cues, I expect that you should be able to tell us that Aleppo is a city. So I don't expect a lot from the average American, only because there's so much happening, so many places around the world that it's really not reasonable to ask the average citizen what's Aleppo or to give your commentary on Aleppo. But if you're running for president, if you're running for president, you should know not only what Aleppo is, where Aleppo is, and the significance of the city. Now, here's the problem. Gary Johnson actually, it got worse. So let me play another clip and then we'll discuss it. Here's Gary Johnson, part 2.
people are making a big deal about this Aleppo thing. I'm just curious what your view is from just like, is it a gotcha thing? Should you have known it? In retrospect, do you know it?
Well, when you recognize what's going on in Syria, when you recognize that that Aleppo is in the kind of the epicenter, Aleppo, not knowing that there's a city in between the two forces, really at the epicenter of but not remembering or identifying that that's Aleppo, guilty.
But in retrospect, is it a town it's a name you know, a town you know? I mean, this is going to be a big deal. Like this is like the first big flap of a campaign that's been doing pretty well, right?
It's going to be
a big flap. I promise you. It already is. So I'm just wondering sort of how you.
I'm incredibly frustrated with myself.
Right. So how do you feel about it? Like, should it be a big flap? Like,
well, sure it should. Absolutely.
All right, that's enough of that. I want to stop because ultimately he says that I just got to get smarter. And, you know, I mean, in all fairness to, and actually I'm pulling up his statement. So Gary Johnson, Aleppo, he put out a statement. In all fairness to him, the most, I think it's important to admit when you've messed up. I think it's human, right? To err is human. To ask for forgiveness is actually divine, right? Not just forgiveness. But Governor Johnson, he put out a statement, and I thought the statement was pretty good. So I'm going to read the statement here. This is his press release after the fact. He said, "This morning, I began my day by setting aside any doubt that I'm human. Yes, I understand the dynamics of the Syrian conflict. I talk about them every day, but hit with what about Aleppo, I immediately was thinking about an acronym, not the Syrian conflict. I blanked. It happens, and it will happen again during the course of this campaign. Can I name every city in Syria? No. Should I have identified Aleppo? Yes. Do I understand its significance? Yes. As governor, there were many things I didn't know off the top of my head, but I succeeded by surrounding myself with the right people, getting to the bottom of the important issues, and making principled decisions. It worked. That is what a president must do. That would begin clearly with daily security briefings that to me will be fundamental to the job of being the president." So in terms of like how you handle this type of mess, you know, I mean, I still get the feeling that Gary Johnson doesn't really have a lot of intellectual curiosity. That's just the look I see on his face. I'm sorry. He doesn't strike me as a person who's altogether serious. But I totally respect this response because if it had been Donald Trump would never have admitted that he didn't know it. Right. If it had been Donald Trump, I did an impersonation earlier. I don't think I could do it again. I'm not even going to try. But Donald Trump would have certainly said, I've heard a lot of bad things about Aleppo. We have to look into that. We have to, you know, people are saying that there's some serious things going on there and we have to consider what we're going to do. So I'm going to listen to all. That's something Donald Trump would have said, knowing full and damn well he doesn't even know where Aleppo is. But Gary Johnson, I think he took the highest road someone can take in a situation like this. But so that you do not turn out like Gary Johnson, I want to give you 4 quick facts that you should know, that everyone running for president should know about Aleppo. The first thing, because you never know, there may be an occasion for you to run for president. And if you're asked, what about Aleppo, you need to be able to answer some basic questions. So, number one, the first thing you should know about Aleppo, it is the largest city in Syria. See, nothing hard, nothing difficult, nothing that is groundbreaking. You don't need it. You don't even need Wikipedia for this. It's the largest city in Syria. Number two, it is one of now you might need Wikipedia for this. It's one of humanity's oldest continuously inhabited cities, approximately inhabited since 600 BCE. So it's one of the oldest cities in the world. Pretty basic stuff. In terms of the Syrian conflict, you should know the Battle of Aleppo. 2012 to the present. It's an ongoing conflict between the Free Syrian Army and the Islamic Fronts, the People Defense. And I'm reading these people involved, right? I don't expect you to know everyone who's involved, but you should know that there has been an ongoing battle in Aleppo called the Battle of Aleppo. Just a freebie there. All right, so the people involved in the battle is the Free Syrian Army, Islamic Fronts, the People's Defense Units, and Sunni militants against the Syrian government, Hezbollah, and the Shiite militants. All right. Last but not least, the fourth thing that you should know, the very basic thing that you should know about Syria, about Aleppo, is where it's located. So I actually pulled a graph up, a map up rather, of where Aleppo is located. Pulling it up on your map now. All right, so right next to Iran, southwest of Iran, south of, actually, no, this is how little you know about Aleppo, because this is actually not real. This is the real graph. So Aleppo is in Syria. Syria is north of Jordan and, of course, west of Iraq. But more importantly, and did I pull that? Hang on, let's do one more thing. The dead silence of radio. Anyway, I was going to pull one more graphic up. But if you're going to know anything, just know it's the oldest city, one of the oldest cities that we know of. It's the largest city in Syria. It is the battlefront. It's the battleground of, it's the Battle of Aleppo, the ongoing conflict since 2012. And if nothing else, you should know that it is a city in Syria. So just in case you're on Morning Joe and you're running for president and we're still seeing a Syrian civil war, you know, God forbid in 20 years, you'll at least be able to answer that question, unlike Gary Johnson. Sorry, Gary. I'm sorry that, you know, it was a rough day for him. But still, again, kudos. I'll applaud him again for owning up to it. All right. In other news, everyone is talking about Matt Lauer and I guess it was a town hall last night. I guess if you want to call it a town hall, it was a town hall. So Matt Lauer had a town hall last night with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And the town hall was ostensibly about veterans issues and foreign policy. The title of the town hall was Commander in Chief, and how would these people, these two candidates, handle themselves as Commander in Chief? It did not go well for Matt Lauer. I think there's a consensus that Matt Lauer did a horrible job as the moderator. The funny thing is, the consensus that he did a bad job is different. The reason is different based on who you asked. If you asked a Hillary Clinton supporter, I'm hearing so many people just saying that Matt was dismissive, he was misogynistic, and he was interrupting Hillary Clinton, that he was asking too many questions about emails. If you ask a Donald Trump supporter, they say that he wasn't hard enough, or that he was too easy on Hillary Clinton, or you know, the consensus is that he did bad. It's just everyone's reason for him doing bad were different. If you ask journalists, there's a great piece in The Intercept by Zaid Jalani talking about the fact that, and this is really my beef with the forum, was that out of all the time spent, particularly with Hillary Clinton and with Donald Trump for that matter, there was very little substance that was discussed. One of my followers on Twitter, Peter, I can't believe, I don't want to, actually I remember it, but I don't want to say his last name. But he made a comment last week that kind of stuck with me. And we were talking about, he's actually a patron, so Peter S. We were talking about the fact, or the feeling that I have, that a lot of journalists are giving Hillary Clinton a free ride. And not just a free ride, but trying to pave the way for a question-free, transparency-free Clinton administration. And Peter jumped into the conversation and said that his take on it is that he would rather see journalists actually ask policy questions. instead of focusing on the basically tabloid headlines, which makes it seem like Hillary is in a competitive race with Donald Trump from a policy position, when in actuality, on policy, they're like, you have someone who's qualified and someone who is just probably just behind Gary Johnson on the issues, truth be told, right? And so I chewed on that a lot, and I thought about that. But then last night was the perfect example, right? Matt Lauer spent the majority of the time with Hillary Clinton on emails when the entire thing should have been about foreign policy, her positions, what is she going to do about ISIS? What is she going to do? There was no time left for questions on policy. And the questions that came on policy actually came from the veterans instead of the moderator. So it was a perfect example of what Peter was asking me mentioning last week, was that here's an opportunity to ask questions on policy, and we focus on the tabloid things. And of course, the tabloid thing, it may be hyperbolic, because there are serious issues, questions that people could ask about the emails. But was this the place to do it when there's so many other things that have to be addressed with regard to Hillary Clinton's position towards Russia, with regards to a no-fly zone in Syria? Are we going to put troops on the ground in Iraq? Hint, 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 there's some already there. There are all these things that we could have talked about, we didn't. And so from a journalistic perspective, it was a complete failure, because it was more about what people thought, or what maybe polls were telling them people wanted to hear, or maybe he thought that he would get more clicks talking about the emails, when in reality, people were looking for a substantive conversation. And with Donald Trump, it was very similar. He asked about Donald Trump's temperament. Do you have the temperament to be the commander in chief? Instead of confronting Donald Trump on the failings of his proposed policies. The Intercept piece by Jelani points out that 8 hours before the event last night, Donald Trump outlined a massive expansion in troops, in ships, and that will cost billions upon billions of dollars. And not a single question last night, even after 8 hours, a full business day to prepare and ask about these new policies being forwarded by Donald Trump. Not a single question, nothing. And so here we are left with, after an hour of time, with when in reality, when is the last time these two candidates have had a sit down and the entire nation looking at them? This was a missed opportunity, to say the least. And I just want to point out just a couple of those things. So this is something that Donald Trump is proposing. This is from The Intercept. Trump proposed a dramatic expansion of the size of the military, increasing the army from 475,000 active duty soldiers to 540,000, roughly the amount deployed at the height of the Afghanistan and Iraq wars, adding roughly 100 ships and fighter jets to the Navy and Air Force. But Trump did not explain how he would pay for it. And even 8 hours after this was released, Matt Lauer and NBC didn't bother to ask him, how are you going to pay for this? So from that perspective, it was really a wasted opportunity. A third of the interview with Hillary Clinton was about emails. Of course, he asked about Iraq being a mistake. But again, these are things that I think hundreds, if not thousands, of articles have been written about that single comment, about the fact that it was a mistake for her to vote, that she believes it was a mistake to vote for the Iraq war. So that's where his energy was. But then there was a question that came from the audience that I wanted to play that I think is worthwhile unpacking. There was an Army veteran in the audience who asked Clinton to describe her plan to defeat the Islamic State. And this is another place where Matt Lauer fell apart, because after spending so much time on the emails, when it came to a substantive question, what are we going to do about ISIS? What are your plans for ISIS? Matt Lauer had to say, do it as briefly as you can. Right. So if he was a coach, he completely mismanaged the clock and lost the game because he did not pay attention to the clock at all. But the clip that I want to say, that I want to play, is of a veteran who had a serious question that I think should be asked of Hillary Clinton.
Thank you.
Secretary Clinton, to your point, you have had an extensive record with military intervention. How do you respond to progressives like myself who worry and have concerns that your hawkish foreign policy will continue? And what is your plan to end wasteful war campaigns in which our peers, servicewomen and men, continue to be killed and wounded?
Well, I assume you're talking about Iraq because of my vote, and you probably are talking about Libya because of the role that I played in the administration's decision about whether to take on Gaddafi.
Mm-hmm.
But before I get to
and
that, let
more.
me say very clearly, I view force as a last resort, not a first choice.
Wow.
I will do everything in my power to make sure that our men and women in the military are fully prepared for any challenge that they may have to face on our behalf. But I will also be as careful as I can in making the most significant decisions any president and commander-in-chief can make about sending our men and women into harm's way.
So that's the question that should have been allowed a follow-up, but there wasn't even a follow-up allowed because Matt Lauer mismanaged the clock. And so the follow-up that I would want to know would not know, but I would offer would be her attitude towards so many incidents that shows that she has a willingness, a very direct willingness to engage in regime change and to engage in militarily. You know, her answer was solid, right? It's a standard answer that you would expect from a president. You know, I treat this decision with the utmost respect. Yeah, but your history shows that maybe you don't respect it as much. Now, are you saying, Hillary, that once you become president and this is your decision to make, that you won't be as callous as you were with regards to Gaddafi? We came, we saw, he died. You know, are you now saying that you will handle it in a much more responsible manner? But of course, there was no time for follow-up because we focused on the drivel of the emails at this point. Truth fact check, right? Not fact check, but reality check. I'm going to steal this from Ben Swan. If we're still focusing on the emails, we have tunnel vision and we're missing out on all of the things that we should be asking her. And this is the perfect example. It's you know what? You didn't get her on the emails. Okay. But we have a lot of questions that still need to be asked and have answered. And this is a perfect example of what happens when we allow the conversation to be controlled by what drives a news cycle versus what's important to American foreign policy. All right. This is actually some pretty big breaking news. The BBC reported earlier that a large earthquake was detected in North Korea, but it is now being confirmed that it was a nuclear test. North Korea tested another nuclear weapon on this evening. I'm reading this report from Ankit Panda, who is a writer and editor for Diplomat APAC. Online, he is saying that for what we know, at 9:30 a.m., there was a detonation, and there was near Pugenji-ri, right, on North Korea's Foundation Day on September 9th. Of course, in terms of the magnitude, we don't have the total magnitude as of yet, the yield rather. But the yield, according to him, would be clearer once uncertainty goes down. They are speculating at this point that did China know? He's saying there's probably China would know in advance. So there's a lot of news breaking with that. Of course, if I'm not mistaken, North Korea either this week or last week just tested missiles, 3 missiles that set off alarms in terms of their ability to carry warhead to nations in their region. So we'll keep you posted on that as we get new information. And I'm sure by the time the morning news breaks, we'll have a confirmation in terms of the yield, the precise location, and feedback from the power players in the region. 857-600-0518. If you want to join the conversation on anything that we spoke about so far, you can do that. Also, we will be tonight in the bonus show. We're going to be discussing our favorite episodes. Today is the big day. It's Bernie Sanders' birthday, right? So everyone's celebrating that. Happy birthday, Bernie, right? We'll sing, And also, I think did I delete all my notes just then? I can't find any of my notes. Oh, well, I'll do it from memory. And also, it's the 50th anniversary for Star Trek. So that's going to be our bonus show tonight. All right. In other news, police in North Dakota, our legislators in North Dakota have approved the usage of drones by police in their state, so long as those drones do not have lethal force, the ability to use lethal force. Legislators, in the attempt to regulate the usage of drones for surveillance, the police union in North Dakota has lobbied successfully for the use of drones in non-lethal policing. So in other words, police officers are going to be able to use drones to deliver tear gas, to deliver rubber bullets, for any type of measures that are not lethal, crowd control, essentially. So we have, I believe this may be the first in the nation, usage of unmanned drones, clearly, in domestic local police agencies. Now, this, in context of a couple of other things that are happening, most recently in Dallas, we saw the usage of a robot that was designed to disarm bombs, deliver a bomb to kill the suspect in the Dallas shooting, where I believe 13 police officers were killed. The problem in these types of scenarios is always authorization and a clear line of authorization and rules and regulations and transparency, so people can understand the authorization process. Like, who authorized this? Who's responsible for this decision if this decision goes wrong? And then it's just the draconian, almost Orwellian feeling that you get when you realize what we use overseas is now coming home to be used on us. And I actually, let me rephrase that whole sentence, because that's actually not an Orwellian feeling yet. It's really kind of a chickens coming home to roost, to be honest with you, right? What we see being used overseas, particularly because the overage, the excess military toys and weapons have been distributed to local policing agencies. And now we see drones will be used in surveillance, not only in surveillance, but also in basic crowd control, delivering non-lethal force. Got it. So in terms of the reason this actually even became a thing was because drones were being used for surveillance, for I can't say surveillance tonight, what the hell? Drones were being used for surveillance, but they did not have a clear warrant process. They were being used without warrants. And then a legislator a state representative attempted to bring this minimum basic due process of getting a warrant into play. And by opening up that can of worms, it actually opened the door for the police lobbies to lobby, the police unions to lobby to get non-lethal use of force attached to these drones. So the entire warrant process, in an attempt to get transparency and due process, actually opened the door for this to happen. So obviously, this is a big, significant shift in domestic policing, and we'll be watching it as it goes along. But it's definitely something for us to keep our eye on. It's, I'm just really disappointed in myself because I think I really just deleted everything here. All right. In other news, actually, let's take this caller. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, this is Jeff from TYT Nation.
Hey, Jeff, how's it going, man?
Pretty good. So I kind of want to give a slight defense of Gary Johnson. I know you covered the Aleppo thing earlier, and look, while I agree with you that he should know about Aleppo, the thing that I really want to kind of defend him on is really kind of the media outrage about it. You notice all of corporate media immediately jumped down his throat.
Yep.
When you had, when you just had the night before, Matt Lauer doing a terrible job, an awful job at following up with questions on Donald Trump. And yet, all of corporate media going after Gary Johnson for, yes, it was a stupid mistake. He should know. I agree with you. He should definitely know. But I think that the media outrage is just really kind of a corporate media attempt to try to silence voices that are not establishment approved. Do you agree? Or
I would say I agree with you like 95%. I think that, and it's a strong 95%, right? I agree with you that but the 5% I disagree with you on is that, you got to be prepared for that exact thing. For that exact thing, like they would take any opportunity to destroy you because you are you're a threat to the two-party system, right? You pose a reasonable threat, a reasonable chance of getting 15% at one point, not anymore, but he stood a chance of getting 5% in the national election to get some funding. And so you know that you have to be on your A game every step of the way. Now, besides that one caveat, I would say, it has been they've had a field day with it. And it's another good 24-hour news cycle thing. That's all the news is here for us for. They're here to just drive a news cycle. But it's such an important city, right? It's if you don't know any other city, people mistake Aleppo to be the capital because of how much it's in the news, right? And it's not the capital. Damascus is the capital, obviously, but still, it's such a large component of what's happening in Syria that I can't say I will agree that they are going over and above, but I think Gary Johnson gave them something good to go with. So it's any guess for me, man. I don't know. I can go either way with that one. But Jeff, hey man, go ahead.
I just want to add one more thing to this too. I agree with you 100% that Aleppo is incredibly important to what's going on in Syria. I mean, it's the main, flashpoint between pro-Assad forces and the Syrian rebels, whoever they might be, and we don't really know, right? As far as I know, we don't know exactly who makes up the Syrian rebels. They could be Islamists, they might not be. I mean, I don't know. And I don't think a lot of people know. And the example that I want to give to illustrate how much the media doesn't really cover what's going on in Syria. They've done a really, really bad job in covering the Syrian civil war. Yeah. The New York Times recently had to go through and edit twice because first they called Aleppo the de facto capital of the Islamic State, which is Raqqa.
Raqqa, yeah.
Right. And then they had to go back and say, well, it's ISIS stronghold. And then they had to go and edit that again, all in trying to make fun of Gary Johnson. So it's a failure on the media, and it's a failure from Gary Johnson himself.
Now I think that's a great point, right? So in their effort to make fun of Gary Johnson, they expose the fact that they're not even equipped to educate the average American on what's happening in Syria. So to that end, on that, I will applaud you and agree 100%. Listen, Jeff, we've been meaning to link together and get you on the show for a while, man. Tell everybody how they can, this Jeff from TYT Nation, where's your Twitter handle and your YouTube channel?
Oh, my Twitter handle is at TYT Nation, and you can go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/TYT Nation. There's already people in the chat that view my show as well, and I want to get more people to watch your show as well. So
cool, man.
Because you're doing a great job here, Ben.
Hey, man, thanks a lot. And you know what? Let's do it formally next time. We'll get you on video and have you on the show.
Awesome. That sounds great.
Hey, take care. Thanks for the call.
All right, bye.
857-600-0518 to join the conversation. Now, that's a good point, right? If you're going to make fun, of Gary Johnson, at least know what the hell you're talking about, right? At least have two really good researchers who could put it together in a document and make it seem like you know what the hell you're talking about, even though you might not know what the hell you're talking about, even though I didn't know Aleppo was a city. I knew about the Battle of Aleppo. I just didn't know it was as old as it was, in full transparency, because this is the no bullshit zone, right? You have the no spin zone. This is the no bullshit zone. So I didn't know it was as old as it is. All right. In other news, the Seattle Seahawks, thanks, David. The Seattle Seahawks as a team have said that they are going to protest in solidarity with Colin Kaepernick against the Star Spangled Banner. Kudos to the entire team. That's a big thing. I'm surprised because I'm surprised that this is going on as long as it's going on. It's a protest. It's a guy who, if you hadn't asked him, he probably would not have said as much, right? He probably just had it very personally, was like, I'm not standing for this, for the Star Spangled Banner. But because we have to make a mountain out of a molehill on everything in the media, we've now turned this into a month-long ordeal where it's a kind of a litmus test. Are you going to stand for the pledge? Or are you going to sit with Kaepernick? And so they're asking everybody about their opinion. So I'm surprised it's going on this long. I'm really happy to see that the Seattle Seahawks are going to stand in solidarity, even if it's for no other reason than they have the right to. And because we're trying to make this something it's not. The Star Spangled Banner is not equivalent to our troops. Not standing for the Star Spangled Banner is not equivalent to disrespecting our troops. Burning our flag is not equivalent to disrespecting our troops. Our troops are being used as a scapegoat to have a reason and a justification to attack Colin Kaepernick's protest because they don't like what he's protesting for, the reason for which he's protesting. That's all. And so in reality, many troops have come out, veterans for Kaepernick, have come out in solidarity saying this is the exact reason we fought. We fought so people can express themselves the way they want to. Some have even came out and said that we fought so that people could. Actually, I'm sorry. I don't want to put words in their mouth. A lot of veterans have used the example of past veterans who fought and came back to injustices as a reason why they stand with Colin Kaepernick, right? So we're in this game of nationalism. We're in this game of hyper-nationalism and using our troops as a means of silencing dissent. Because again, the Star Spangled Banner is not equivalent. You know what's disrespecting the troops? Getting up and saying, I disrespect the troops. That's disrespecting the troops. And everyone who's acting like you care about the troops, what else is disrespecting the troops is not funding the VA properly. not running the VA properly, right? Having homeless veterans is disrespecting the troops. Refusing to stand for the Star-Spangled Banner is the least disrespectful thing that you could do to our troops. Passing up a homeless veteran and not caring about the structural problems that made him homeless and he or she homeless and keeps them homeless, that is disrespectful to the troops. And there's a strong correlation. I guarantee you there's a strong correlation between the people who are crying and moaning, saying, oh, you're being so disrespectful to our troops, and those who probably would not change one structural thing to ensure that our veterans are never homeless, hungry, or unemployed. Now, there's another group of people involved in this story that I have to talk about. And shucks, I did not trim this video. I'm going to play this first video. This video is of Shaquille O'Neal. I'm getting kind of tired of our athletes, and you'll see why. Here's Shaquille O'Neal.
What do you think about that, Shaq? You heard Heather's last story.
I mean, to each his own. It's something I wouldn't do. You know, his comments were there injustices. There have always been injustices. You know, me personally, I would probably go about it a different way. You know, my question is, what happened last year? How come you didn't decide to do this last year or the year before that or the year before that? So I don't know, Colin, but again, to each his own. I don't really have a say on it, but I would never do that. My father was a military man, and, you know, he protected his country. Uncles are in law enforcement. You know, they go out and work hard every day. Just, you know, other ways to get your point across.
So you're an African American. And a lot of people feel
I didn't notice.
From your perspective, you should be standing with Colin Kaepernick, but you also are pro-military and pro-cop. Can you be both?
Yes, I can be both. Again, you know, my thing is, you know, you have to enter onto the scene one way. You know, people like Muhammad Ali and Bill Russell, they were one way their whole career. You can't show us something and then go to another just because of, you know, certain issues. Again,
This is what happens when you, oh God, check with people. Like, I always, as smart as I think I am, I always check with somebody before I say, you know, because he literally just said that you do not have permission to grow and develop, right? The way you come in on a scene is the way that you have to stay. Shaq, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
Life doesn't work like that. You have the freedom to grow. So if Colin Kaepernick, when he came in as a rookie, didn't see anything wrong with the world, and then after being in the, I don't even know how long he's been in the league, 3 years, right? 4 years, maybe. I don't know. Who cares? But after 3 or 4 years, he looks around and says, man, I'm making all this money, but I see my brothers and my cousins and my friends still getting killed by the police. He has the right to speak out about that. He does not have to be beholden or pigeonholed to who he was. That's like the opposite of what you want humans to do. We want people to grow and develop. So that's the number one thing. The number two thing is stop using police and troops and veterans as an excuse to silence this man's dissent. I've already talked about that. The third thing is, you just said that you don't have anything to say about it, but then you open your mouth and say a whole lot of things about why you think he shouldn't have done it, and why he, you know, it's like he's an overnight protester. You know, he all of a sudden, you know, what happened? No, you know, what happened last year? You know, what happened that made him do that? You know, he wasn't protesting last year. He wasn't protesting last year because maybe he had not developed in that area, or maybe he had not experienced it. But now he's seen it, now he's experienced it, and he's at the point that he wants to stand out and say something about it. Somebody please get Shaquille O'Neal and take him home. Here's another guy that I'm going to trim on the spot. I'm going to trim this on the spot because I have to talk about him. Let's see how good I can do this. Let's try it.
If you win it, you win it. You lose it, you lose it. But don't throw no flags. Don't.
Okay, no, that's the wrong spot. Let's see. Let me back up a little more. Boom, boom, boom.
I think he just should have took. I would have grabbed more people. I would have talked to more people to find out what's the best way to do it. before I
good.
did. And I'll give you the best example ever. I've been speaking to me and Jim Brown, been friends for many
Okay, you guys, I'm trimming this on the fly, so let me back it up. Let's see.
years. I just came from one of the military bases, Aberdeen, in Baltimore area. Did a huge signing there.
So if you would have gone to, you would have not been able to do that with the anthem. Would you have struggled just on that, your relationship with the military?
Yeah. Period. So see, and that's the thing, Colin. I think somebody really needs to clear, right? Is that the flag is a different issue. You can think about what you want to think about the flag, but it's the people who stood for that in this country, right? We're not standing here. We're not having this conversation if people didn't go die for this country, right? If you fight for nothing else, the only thing that unites us as a country right now is that. And that's the thing that you can't, I don't care what the issue is. I get it 100%. Listen, I'm in this fight with him. But what he's trying to do and the stage he's doing it is absolutely not the stage to do it on.
Okay, that's enough of him. Ray Lewis, who has a questionable past with the law in the first place, right? He could probably do an episode of how to get away with murder, but that's besides the point. I'm not gonna hold him to that because the law didn't, right? But Ray Lewis now is saying some things that sounds good, but is decidedly wrong. The flag is not, he's saying the flag is the thing that unifies us. No, this idea that we have the ability to have have some commonality and solidarity around the American concept, not even the American dream. That's tomorrow's episode. The concept of liberty and patriotism and nationalism and soldiers fighting for our freedom and giving us the freedom to sit here and talk about and criticize America, right? That is not a unifying force in America right now because there are people decidedly left out of this, Ray Lewis. And because of your position in life, you are not privy to the people who are left outside of this. And actually, even in some of your other critiques of Black Lives Matter, you try to blame everyone who's on the outside of this, blame it on them, right? So this idea that we can have this commonality with America through our patriotism is one of the oldest and most manipulative and deceptive concepts in American history, period. Because it depends on who's defining that patriotism and for what reason are they lifting up that patriotism. For the most part, it has been lifted up to forward our interests abroad and to subjugate dissent in a domestic policy. That's what patriotism has been used for. And for you to dismiss him because don't touch the flag, don't touch the people who have, this is, okay. So I'm going to make the black delegation, the racial draft. We offer up Ray Lewis and Shaquille O'Neal in exchange for whoever. Take your pick. I'm not even going to be picky at this point, but I'm trading those two guys because it makes absolutely no sense to me for people to be at that level and not have had the opportunity to understand the context of their conversations that they're trying to forward, right? It's like they're saying things that they picked up somewhere and heard, and they've not vetted those conversations. And to me, that's the perfect example, Shaquille O'Neal, of coming in at a level, leaving at a level, coming into the league at a certain level and staying that way the rest of your life. This is exactly what Shaquille O'Neal and Ray Lewis have demonstrated, their inability to advance their arguments beyond some rudimentary, elementary bullshit notions of patriotism. Caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, question?
This is Wendy. How are you?
I'm doing good, Wendy. I hadn't, yeah. How's it going?
Good. I actually called to comment a bit on the forum from last night and Gary Johnson, but I see that you've switched topics entirely, so I'm going to try to connect the two.
Yeah, give me a little bit of both. That's fine. Give me both.
Sure.
What you got?
Sure. So with regard to things that other athletes are saying and trying to kind of bridge this support for the troops or support of patriotism or whatever under the guise basically not being woke, right? They're, they're doing the opposite of what
Decidedly.
you would expect, and they're condemning and trying to silence Kaepernick, which I think is wrong. But I think we also see something very similar happening in the mainstream press when it comes to international issues and concerns that do relate to our troops, to be honest, and that this sort of connects what we saw last night and this morning.
Yes.
What's interesting about the Gary Johnson debacle is that I agree that he should know, and I was just like appalled. I don't like him or his policies, but I'm just sitting there going, oh my God, like you want to be president and you can't even locate Aleppo or probably Syria on a map. But the worst part about it is that the people who are responding and freaking out about it were also often making errors about Syria. So the New York Times in particular, they've made repeated errors when it came to Iraq, when it comes to even specific locations in Syria, when it comes to what forces do X, Y, Z. So it's really, it's hypocrisy at its finest, but it's worse because Gary Johnson doesn't have nearly the same level of a platform that the New York Times does.
Right.
And then on top of that, that Hillary Clinton does or that Donald Trump does. So when we watched them last night, Hillary Clinton repeatedly made statements about what's going on in the Middle East that were completely inaccurate, that were bridging all sorts of groups that have nothing to do with each other, but because of, you know, the people who are paying her bills and helping her campaign, she has to kind of name drop, or I would say country drop, right? So she's got to talk about Iran, and she's got to talk about Hezbollah, and a lot of these things really weren't connected, but she was trying to string them together in an attempt to seem like she's an authority on it. And yes, she's smart, but at the end of the day, she was wrong about a lot of things, and there's no one there to check her of it, and that's the real problem here. We have
That's the problem. That's the problem is because we don't have people in place who can real-time fact check. Matter of fact, was it Chris Wallace who said that his job, and this is, I feel so bad because just last week I'm like, Chris Wallace is pretty consistent, pretty thorough. I wouldn't sleep on Chris Wallace from Fox News. Then he comes out and says, well, it's not his job to fact check them. If you as a journalist and a moderator are not going to fact check someone who's using your platform or even just in your presence, then what are you even there for? And that's what I had a problem with Matt Lauer last night, in addition to a couple of other things, was that he did not use that as an opportunity to forward the conversation any meaningful way last night. Instead, he's talked about the emails, and I'm as appalled with Comey using 14 minutes of his press conference to explain why Hillary Clinton should be charged, and then the last 60 seconds basically say I'm not charging her. I'm just as appalled as anyone else. But enough with the damn emails when we actually have some substantive things that we can't even unpack because everybody, Matt Lauer, journalists, just want to take all the time to repeat what's already been said a million times. Wendy, you connected those two things very seamlessly. You seem to be a pro at this. We have to get you on the show to do it sometime.
Good, thanks. All right.
Thanks for the call. You have a great weekend. 857-600-0518. Yeah, man. That does bother me. Like I was taken aback. 14 minutes of that Comey. I'm with you on the emails. That's what I'm saying. I'm with you on the emails, but enough about the emails because we're not allowed. We're focusing on that so much that we can't talk about some real policy problems that both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump have challenges on, and some of their positions are, well. Anyway, there's an article in Foreign Policy today about Hillary Clinton's positions on the Kremlin, on Russia. And I think it's an interesting article for a couple of reasons. One, because it presents an argument that I didn't think I would read in Foreign Policy for many reasons, and you can probably guess why. I didn't expect that I would read this, but the argument, the author was Clinton Elric. He basically says that the Kremlin really believes that Hillary Clinton wants to start a war with Russia. And his argument in the article is that there have been some key moments and things that have been said by Hillary Clinton that are interpreted from Russia, from the Russian side of the equation, as very hawkish, very aggressive, and seen as a threat or a potential threat. A potential threat. So a couple of the key points that he talked about that I think are worth mentioning is that that Hillary Clinton describes Putin, by describing Putin as the godfather of the alt-right, Clinton has recreated the political binary that existed in the Cold War. This is taken directly from the article. So in other words, she has now attached Putin to a worldwide right-wing problem that he is the godfather, the leader of, and he essentially is saying that that creates a false binary that puts the conversation back to being a simplistic good versus evil. I'm paraphrasing at this point. And because of that, Russia genuinely heard Hillary. And they heard her when she said this, and some of the language that she used was language that she's used previously, and it's consistent with their belief that Hillary Clinton is far more hawkish and detrimental to relationships with Russia. Another argument that he forwarded was Russia views Clinton with fear. They fear that she is an existential threat. This is written in foreignpolicy.com. Her imposition of a no-fly zone in Syria is a real danger. Russians view her as unstable, true madman theory. By ridiculing Trump's more concessionary approach to Russia, she is painting herself into a corner. And Hillary Clinton uses allegations of Russian hacking of DNC as a pretext for war. So these are some pretty strong accusations from an American who is a visiting researcher at the Russian Foreign Ministry in Moscow State Institute of International Relations. That's a long title, but he is he holds a prominent position, but he is writing from a Russian perspective because that's where he's writing from. And that's where he's located. That's where his focus is. And from his vantage point, he's forwarding the idea that Russia sees Hillary Clinton as an existential threat, as unstable, and painting herself into a corner with the false binary that was present during the Cold War. Now, I'm curious to see a rebuttal article to this, because some of this, particularly the Syrian no-fly zone, right? That would be a real danger. That would pose a serious threat. But I'm really curious as to the perceptions on that side of the equation, right? To what extent are these perceptions that he's forwarding and representing, saying that this is what Russia feels like, is that a consensus? Is that the far right of the Russian equation? Who Russia's not a monolith, right? So who is he speaking for in this equation? Because these are some pretty, outside of the Syrian no-fly zone, some of it seems like, really? I can see the comparison to Trump, because Trump is going with the more conciliatory tone, but that Clinton is an existential threat to Russia. It sounds like the more hawkish element of Russia viewing America through the same lens that they think Clinton is viewing Russia through. Now, I say they think Clinton is viewing Russia through because I'm still curious myself as to whether or not she is. We'll know almost immediately, right? I think we'll know within the first year. Like, we'll see what she does with Syria. We'll see what happens there, and then we'll have our answer. But part of me is still hopeful enough to believe that she is not as hawkish with regard to Russia as the Russians think she is, because that's problematic. That if she turns out to be as hawkish as the hawkish faction in Russia believes she is, then yeah, we have a serious problem on our hands. So in terms of the article, I'm surprised to see this written in foreign policy, because if you look at some of the people who are a part of foreign policy, a lot of them are supporters of Hillary Clinton. So I'm surprised that this was even written there. But then two, the context from which he's writing it is really from a Russian perspective, which immediately gives it more credence for me, right? I'm like, okay, so he's writing from a Russian perspective, but then I can't with a critical eye just assume that this is a monolith, that Russia is a monolith, because they're not. And the language that's being used here clearly represents the more hawkish faction of Russia. And the question is there a more moderate faction in Russia in light of Putin? But I will say the part that I absolutely agree with is using Russia as a political pawn and stoking a Cold War environment. That's something that absolutely has been happening through this entire election. But there's a difference between political posturing and using Russia as political fodder, which I disagree with, and saying that Hillary Clinton is an existential threat to Russia, and viewing her as pretty much viewing Hillary Clinton as we view Kim Jong-un. That's what these statements represent. So, yeah. What do you think? What do you think? I mean, because before everyone jumps off, and please just do me this favor. Before everyone in my audience just says, well, yeah, she is. She's an existential threat. I want you to understand an existential threat means that Hillary Clinton has the intention to destroy Russia as we know it. And that is a huge accusation that I'm not sure I'm quite ready to accept. I will say that she will use Russia politically as a domestic political fodder to distinguish herself from Donald Trump, to appeal to the more hawkish in the Republican Party, to embrace the neocons. I'm sure she would do all of that and is doing all that. But to say that she's an existential threat to Russia, I don't know. I think we have to dig deeper into this, the vantage point from which he's writing this article, as well as the voices that he is ostensibly representing, because this cannot, well, I don't believe that this could be a monolithic viewpoint in Russia, but most certainly it's from the hawkish faction in Russia. All right, 857-600-0518. And, oh, actually, I'm sorry. That's it. We're out of time. And I didn't even get to all my stories. Okay, so I'm going to try to do maybe tomorrow I'll do a Friday show for our patrons. And I'm going to cover some issues on class, particularly the story that I've been meaning to get to from The Nation, dealing with teachers who have had to take second jobs as Uber drivers. So we're going to cover that. And this is if I can get to bed on time tonight and come into the studio and do this in the morning for you guys. Then the other thing I'm going to cover would be the story on prison labor being modern slavery in Texas. The use of prison labor to fund prisons. It's a fascinating story, and I want to talk about that. So that's going to be the Friday bonus show for patrons. Go to patreon.com/the BPD show and sign up to become a patron to get access to that show. Immediately after this show, we're going to talk about the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, because we're Trekkies, and we're going to talk about our favorite episodes, and that's going to be up after we get done talking about it. Thanks for being here tonight, folks. It is always a pleasure. Good night.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. It's Ben Dixon! If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/the BPD show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.